Well, we've got a beautiful weekend here in early May in west central Illinois. Clay and I ran down to the farm here, and we've got a few projects to do this weekend, but we figured we'd bring you a quick video on one in particular, because for us personally, we've done a lot of research online and tried a few different methods, but the do-it-yourself hot zone fencing method for us really paid off last year, and we anticipate that to work again this year in the same way. So obviously you see we've got a bunch of material here. Looks like it might be a lot, but there's really only a few items here. You can all find them at your local hardware store. Clay, I don't know if you wanted to say a few words about the area we're in and kind of what we're up to here. But
yeah, we learned the hard way 2 years ago when we did not fence in a few of our smaller secluded fields that had beans on them. The deer really nipped the tops of the beans before they were able to grow and get any pods on them. So in the fall we were hunting over stunted beans.
Yep.
So last year was our first year experimenting with kind of our version of a hot zone fence, and it worked out really, really well. It might not be 100% foolproof for keeping deer out, but we think the vast majority of deer are staying out of the plot because of this system we have here.
And most of these fields we're talking about doing this on are less than an acre, for the most part between a half and an acre. And you know, the browse pressure, as Clay was saying, is extreme come summertime. So by keeping the deer out here, you know, between May and pretty much mid-October, we're able to pull that fencing back in the fall, and man, we've got food for the rut and late season. So what we'll do next, I think, is just kind of bring you the video and kind of show you each item, why we use it, why, you know, what we learned was better than the rest, and we'll just kind of show you how we put it up. So
one other thing to mention too real quick, we mentioned this is a do-it-yourself, kind of our version. You can buy already all bundled together hot zone setups. Non-typical offers one I know for about $450. But after a bunch of research, we decided, hey, let's make a few trips to our hardware store, do it ourselves with what we consider a little bit more quality material.
Yep.
We think we're going to get a little bit longer life out of this setup than what we would by you know.
Yeah, we read a lot of reviews on some of those kind of all-in-one kits, and they have their advantages and disadvantages. The disadvantages are, you know, they can be a little bit more inexpensive material, so they might not have the durability. But you know, there's some other negatives too on you know, obviously how large of a space you can cover with one of those kits. And you know, each one of our fields is a little bit different. None of them are perfectly square, so you know, to be able to add and subtract based on our needs was something that was definitely a selling point for us. So hold tight here, tune in, let us know what you think, and hopefully we can you know, pass along a little knowledge based on our experience. Enjoy the video.
Before we get started, I'm sure you're curious on what materials are really needed for the hot zone fence. First one I'm going to call out here is a pigtail. It's a type of step-in post. 35 inches tall is the version that we bought. We like this size. Another key component, Polytape. This is the outer ring of the hot zone that's actually going to be electrified, 1 inch thick, so it's nice and visible for the deer. Very important, 6 foot tall T-posts. We put these on the 4 corners to have some stability to the fencing as well as tension control. For the T-posts, this is a must-have. It's a post hole driver to get those in the ground. If you don't have this, it's really going to be a long day, so make sure you have one of these. And working this way, 6 foot tall grounding rod. We like to use 2 of them. It just lessens the likelihood of the rod running dry and then no electricity on the actual fence itself. So we recommend 2 6-foot tall grounding rods. And last, but definitely not least, here's the solar charger. We went with the amped up version 12-volt Parmak. We really like this. It's proved us well last year, and it's got a good shelf life to it as well. It's not gonna, at least what they tell us, it's good for more than a few years. It's not gonna break on you right away. So we recommend this too. Now we'll bring you how to put the fence up.
Well, so now that we went through kind of on a broad scale exactly what you need, it kind of brings us to our first step. And basically what we're going to do here, see I got a T-post, we're going to go and define the 4 corners of the field that we want. So over my shoulder, as you'll see, we've got about a 0.8 acre plot down here, surrounded by some ridges. And we fenced this in the last couple of years, and what we basically found out is it's about 100 yards long by about 50 yards wide, so double that. So about 300 yards total is what we're gonna have to go around towards. So what we're gonna first do, get these T-posts in the ground. We choose 6-footers, a little bit sturdier. It allows us to pound it into the ground further because at the end of the day, most of the tension is going to be on these 4 T-post corners. So we'll get those in the ground now. We do have a 5th T-post. We'll talk about that one a little bit later. But basically what I have here, and it's almost essential, is this post driver. And these save you a lot of legwork and allow you to get this in the ground a lot faster. So we'll start pounding away, and we'll come back to you with the next step. That should about do it. Next one.
Next step, starting from T-post 1, once again we put 4 T-posts on the corner of the field, the edge of where we want the fencing. Now the next step is pigtails. Again, these are 35-inch pigtails, about $3 a pop. Every 10 yards is what we feel is the magic number for keeping the tension where it needs to be on the Polytape so it doesn't sag too much. So some quick math, this field is 50 yards wide by 100 yards long. On 2 sides, that means there's 300 total yards of ground we need to cover. Every 10 yards you put one of these. Roughly we're going to be using 30 on the outside layer, and then we're going to be using an inner layer for fencing, including Polytape, that we're going to be using roughly 30 as well. We'll explain more about that in detail as we get further along here. So step 1, doesn't have to be perfect, but about 10 yards, boom. Another 10 yards, there we are. Just keep going around. All right, now that we got the outer layer of the fence up, which is the pigtails, no Polytape yet, this is just the shell, if you will. Next step is to put the inner layer. This is the visual confusion layer, I'll call it, for the deer. What makes them believe they can't jump over the first and the second layer. We think the best distance is approximately 2 pigtail lengths, 6 feet. That's what we did last year. It worked out really well for us. It'll make more sense when we get the Polytape up for why we're doing it this distance, but the general idea here is you want the deer to believe that they cannot jump over both outer and inner layers. And we think about 6 feet is where you need to be. So I'm gonna go around now. And once again, it's not, don't have to be exactly 6 feet, but somewhere around that is what you want. And just go around the shell. for the inner layer, and you're one step closer. Doesn't really matter if you line them up where the other pigtails are. I tend to, but you could stagger them if you want. I don't think it really matters. Again, about 6 feet in between outer and inner. There's a corner T-post. What I'm going to do here is actually put one in line with the corner T-post. You'll see why in a second. We just keep going down. Biggest pain is not wanting to drive over the beans and have to go back and forth to grab another handful of the pigtails. With only 2 people, it's a lot of work. There's 2 options that you see primarily for post for the outer and inner layer. It's either these pigtails like this that we really like, or the cheaper option. These are about half the price of these, so about $1.50 versus $3 a pop. And these are plastic step-ins again, like this. The issue is they're a lot more flimsy, and when you get some tension on them, they tend to break compared to these all metal, really sturdy pigtails. One other reason, and the next step that we're going to talk about, is Polytape on the outside and inside. These pigtails are really easy. If I get the angle for you, literally all you do is go in like this, and it's locked in onto the next one. That compared to this cheaper, where you gotta insert it in like this, and a lot of times these little plastic pieces that hold the tape in will break. This is not going to break. These tend to break. So just a FYI for when you're deciding what type of step-in post to use. That's why we recommend the pigtails. So next step is start feeding the Polytape through. I got a wheel here. This is what they actually look like when they're brand new. Once again, 1-inch Polytape. You want at least 1 inch for a visual so the deer can see it. And then when they see it, it's a little bit of a object for them to kind of key into, and they focus in on it. They actually, what we've seen is they take their mouth and face and they basically go up to smell it, and that's when it zaps them. So I like to make sure it's plenty wide enough. And from here, going just like this. Don't worry about the tension now. You want it fairly tight, but that's going to come once you get to the T-posts, the 4-corner T-posts. All right, now we got the first side done with Polytape. You'll see it, I can play with it like this. It's not tensed up yet. That's fine. You got to get a T-post, the tape through a T-post insulator first, and then that's going to start the tension. Speaking of the insulators, you'll find these at every one of your local hardware store. T-post tape insulator for tape up to 1.5 inch wide. This is, once again, 1 inch. Put it in like this, and you can click it like that, and it's sturdy. So one thing I forgot to mention in that last step is we actually have to tie off the tag end of the initial post that you tie it off of, the T-post that is. That's what's going to give you your basically tension right there. So now it's not going to pull through. If you don't tie it off, it's going to slowly pull through. So on the first T-post that you touch with the Polytape, it's where you should actually start. Start at the first T-post you want to, and then that's going to be your point that you actually tie off, and that's what's going to give you the tension, like what I have right here. So don't forget to do that. We should have done that at this one, but I forgot to. So now, going to keep it tight, and you clip that insulator. Boom. and there's some good tension. Now we just keep going down the line. All right, so we're at our starting point. This is the first T-post that we tied off, the tag end tied off the Polytape on. So what I'm gonna do here, ideally I would just have another insulator. We'll see if this works. Let's put this in here. Hopefully it snaps in for me. I don't think it's going to. Oh, there it is. Okay. Now, we can go on the inside.
You see as he's going around here, this corner post right here is starting to kind of warp a little bit. Before, when we were talking about the plastic step-ins, the all plastic ones, that would be broken already. That would snap in half. So what we'll actually do is once he gets done going all the way around the field, is we'll come back and we'll straighten that right back out, and it should be no problem. When you tighten the tension, it tends to do that. So giving the whole field the once over when you're done to make sure everything's standing straight up is the best way to go. You can see the width here too, between the two. Isn't going to be perfect between each one, but for the most part, what you're doing is you're creating this visual barrier for the deer. The way their vision works, and I'm no deer biologist, but you know, they see a certain way that actually looks like to them a really high wall. It could be, I don't know, 8-10 feet. So it's more of an optical illusion for them. And then if they do get close enough, they realize, oh, that's a little too far. So they're not able to jump it. All right. Well, Clay did a great job getting the tape and the pigtails in all around the fence here. This is the 5th T-post we'd mentioned before that I just got pounded in with an insulator and the tape running here. So this T-post, as you'll see when we show you the whole picture of the field, is right next to our redneck, and it's sort of in the middle of the entire field. And what we're going to do from this post here, other than this helping aid a little extra tension, is we're going to attach our solar panel, which is going to provide our electricity and power. So we actually did a little research on this. The Parmak 30-mile range Solar-Pak. This is the 12 volt. There's some smaller voltage options out there, and if you buy one of those ready-made packs, you're going to get probably a weaker system than you really want. This one's probably way too powerful for what we have, being a 30-mile range. But what we wanted was to make sure that it did have the appropriate amount of electricity go through. So I think these were about $300 if I recall. Sometimes you can find them on sale, but they're really nice solar power pack. There are options out there that you'll see on some other videos and recommendations to use a battery power option. That's a little less expensive, but there's some risks with that, and it just isn't as foolproof from what we found. So the other thing I want to mention on this before we put it on the T-post, sometimes you can put them on a wooden stake or a pole or something like that, but we like the T-post. But this little T-post adapter is not part of the initial purchase of the solar system, so you got to buy this separately. It's not too expensive, but what it allows you to do is angle the T-post towards where it's going to get the most sun throughout the day, and you just slide it right on. Solar power captures it, and this just sits here. The last part of what we're going to have to do, and we'll bring that to you now, is the energy is going to come in here to the internal battery pack, but we got to connect it to some grounding posts. So we're going to drive those in the ground and kind of explain how that works. Hopefully fire it right up on the first try. So we'll bring you the next step now. All right, just as we were talking about the solar panel unit, we need to make sure to put our grounding rods in the ground appropriately. So we decided to go with 2, and we wanted the longer version because we want to make sure to get down where there's moisture. It gets pretty dry and hot this during the summer down here. So what we did is we've got these brackets, this black electrical wire that's insulated, which will eventually attach to the black end here on the solar panel. But first, we're going to have to drive these into the ground. I'll start with the back one and basically just hammer them in as far as they go. All right, so we got both ground rods in, and the live end of the wire is touching each one of these ground rods. So now we just have to connect it to our solar panel. Let's make sure our power's off, which it is. So black on black, red on red. You unscrew this, not all the way, but enough to get this tag end to the live end of the wire. Again, I'm not an electrician, but this is pretty straightforward work. So you just loop it there, and then you tie real tight. Try and get one of those notches there. That's cinched. Pretty tight there. So I give it a little tug, not too much. You want it to break, but that's in there where it's gonna bring up power there. Red end. They have these pulse connectors you can buy at Fleet Farm or your local hardware store. Pretty straightforward. So all you do is you pretty much put one end here, and you have to attach it. This will be the hot end to the tape, the Polytape. It should slide in there pretty straightforward. If I can get it correctly. A little tension, there we go. You got your wing nuts that you attach to both sides. And again, as soon as this gets connected and you turn that box on, you're gonna have live power in theory. So if we did everything right, that's what's gonna happen. So that's tight on there. Again, that's on the outside Polytape. The inside, we're not gonna bother having any electricity to. That's again more visual barrier. So to just kind of pan out, we've got the solar panel system with the battery inside, mounted on a T-post here with a bracket, facing where we're gonna get the most direct sunlight for the longest period of the day. We've got the black end, which is our ground end, going into the 2 grounding rods, spaced apart at least 3 feet, and have this at least 3 feet from the unit, okay? And then the red is connected right to the power source, so I'm gonna stand back. These things are as easy as can be. Just an on switch, and we'll see what we get here. That's a really good sign. You've got the different power source here, and as soon as that little dial goes all the way to the right, you know you're going. And if you listen real faintly, you can hear a click. That click means that the power that's coming in through the solar panel is going out to the wire. So we've got a hot fence right now. Don't want to touch it. I'm not going to bother testing it. You can buy one of those fence testers to check your amp. We did that last year, and it was plenty fine. When you have a 30-mile range Parmak solar panel pack, there's enough juice there. So what we'll do now is we'll turn it off again. We're gonna go around the fence one last time, make sure all the pigtails are in straight so they don't break or bend in any wind or rain, and we'll come back here, fire it up, and get out of here. So that's kind of how you do it. Well, so there you have it. We were able to get the fence working in the first try, so that's exciting. Wanted to bring you a quick recap here before the end of the night and kind of walk you through some of the costs and stuff. So we were able to get the fence up in just over 2 hours?
Yeah, 2 hours for 2 people. Usually we have a third or fourth helping and it goes a little bit faster, but
yeah,
we did the best we could. And a hot day here in early May.
Absolutely.
Cost-wise, our total setup per fence location is about $600, give or take a few bucks. That compared to a non-typical all-encompassing package that you could buy that's going to run you about $450. So ours is more expensive, but we think the higher quality materials are A, easier to put up and take down, and B, it's going to last longer, give us a longer shelf life.
Yeah, so let us know what you think. Obviously, comment below if you have questions or just want to engage in a little conversation. We're happy to do that. We're obviously here to learn as well. So that's just a method we found as far as the do-it-yourself hot fence. We'll kind of bring you some updates on our social media platforms, Instagram and Facebook, throughout the year on how it's working. So stay tuned for that. Check us out. Hit that subscribe button and like button on this video, and stay tuned for more to come. This is Cody and Clay from the Advantage Whitetail team, thanking you for checking out the video. Have a good one.